So we've got an update to the story regarding Ilhan Omar and the House Democratic Party's plan to rebuke her publicly on the floor, and it seems as if they're actually starting to kind of back off in a way. So as Cheryl Gay Stolberg and Glenn Thrush of the New York Times reports, earlier in the day, Democrats, including some prominent African Americans, confronted Speaker Nancy Pelosi at a testy, closed-door meeting, demanding to know why they were being pushed to pass the resolution when bigoted comments by Republicans have gone unchallenged. Representative Ayanna Pressley, Democrat of Massachusetts, said she told leadership that there must be equity in our outrage, noting that Miss Omar, a Minnesotan and one of the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress, was being attacked for her faith. Islamophobia needs to be included in the anti-Semitism resolution, she told reporters on Wednesday. We need to denounce all forms of hate. There is no hierarchy of hurt. What would be the appropriate level of punishment? A public flogging? Representative Raul Grijalva of Arizona, the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, asked in an interview after the meeting. We're all responsible for what we say, and there are consequences whether it is this resolution or something else, Mr. Grijalva said. But there is a double standard we have to be aware of. The level of condemnation on Miss Omar has been really intense. So this tells me that maybe it's the case that they're starting to get it at least a little bit. Because after Republicans repeatedly do these types of things, you have Kevin McCarthy denouncing Ilhan Omar, but putting out a tweet where he singled out 3 Jewish billionaires getting away from all of this unscathed. You have Donald Trump not unequivocally condemning neo-Nazis who marched in Charlottesville, saying there were very fine people on both sides, feigning outrage about this, and tweeting, quote, "It is shameful that House Democrats won't take a stronger stand against anti-Semitism in their conference. Anti-Semitism has fueled atrocities throughout history, and it's inconceivable they will not act to condemn it." You have tweets like that from Donald Trump, who endorsed a pedophile, Roy Moore. You have members of the Republican Party, Steve King, who are actual white supremacists, questioning why it's controversial. I mean, do we have to go on? The President of the United States, he called for a total and complete shutdown on Muslims entering and exiting the country. The Republican Party is supporting Donald Trump in his effort to ban transgender troops from serving in the military. The Republican Party is speaking out on behalf of religious bigots who own bakeries, for example, and businesses that want to discriminate against members of the LGBTQ community. The Republican Party says nothing about violence against trans women, especially trans women of color, so they're allowed to be openly bigoted, and nobody really bats an eye at that. But now, when Ilhan Omar says one thing that's perceived as anti-Semitic, when in fact it is not, when Jewish leaders like Bernie Sanders came to her defense, all of a sudden, the Democratic Party is expected to dogpile on her? No, that's complete bullshit. And it's about time that the Democratic Party is finally being made aware of this double standard. The Republican Party can be as hypocritical as they want to be, and there'll be no repercussions ever. And it's about time that Democratic leadership of all people finally recognize this. It's about time that they stop falling for the Republican Party's attempts to pit the Democratic Party leadership against their own members who are actually popular, who are actually fighting for the American people. So to see people like Ayanna Pressley put pressure on Nancy Pelosi and call out this double standard, I'm feeling a little bit more encouraged. I will say that, because at the beginning of this week, I know myself and other progressives just felt demoralized, because it's like, if we can't have an honest and open discussion about war crimes and modern day apartheid and genocide being carried out by a country without being called anti-Semitic, Palestinians never have a chance at escaping oppression if this is what's going to happen, because America is one of the few countries who actually could make a difference here if we wanted to. So it is encouraging to see this, and Nancy Pelosi, not only is she kind of backing off now, but she even defended Ilhan Omar albeit in a tepid way that's not entirely agreeable, but nonetheless, she's definitely walking back her initial condemnation. So, as Mike Lillis of The Hill reports, she says, "I don't think that the Congresswoman perhaps appreciates the full weight of how it was heard by other people, although I don't believe it was intended in an anti-Semitic way," Pelosi told reporters at the Capitol. "But the fact is, if that's how it was interpreted, we have to remove all doubt." So it is important to acknowledge that the discussion has progressed in a positive way, because if you'll recall, at the beginning of the week, they were talking about whether or not they would name her, and now they've ruled that out, and now they're expanding the rebuke to include other forms of hate, which is important. Now, the resolution itself has since passed, and it does indeed seem to be an improvement over what we were expecting at the beginning of the week. We were expecting it to target Ilhan Omar, but it has since expanded and now includes all forms of hate. So as James Zogby points out, the Dem House bill is finally out, drama is over, and result is a good resolution denouncing all forms of hate or intolerance against any religious, ethnic, or racial communities. Those who intended to target Ilhan Omar and steamroll a bill that would support their position lost big time. And now it's the case that there are 23 Republicans who voted against it because it became something that didn't target Ilhan and just was a general denunciation of hate. Now those Republicans are taking heat because they voted against it. This includes Liz Cheney and Louis Gohmert. Now Nancy Pelosi, she says here that, since it was interpreted as anti-Semitic, we have to remove all doubt. No, you need objectivity. Objectivity is the goal here, because anytime there's a bad faith actor who's going to say something is anti-Semitic to shut down debate and get you to be quiet about human rights abuses committed by the right-wing Israeli government, you can't just say, "Oh, well, now I have to be quiet." No, you have to be objective, and if you see an instance of actual anti-Semitism, then of course you have to call that out, and progressives do call that out.
What Ilhan Omar is saying is very scary to me, and it's very scary to a lot of people, and I don't think you have to be Jewish to recognize that.
So you can't allow Republicans to set the terms of the debate, because what they do as bad faith actors is exploit that situation. So for example, when it comes to the gay baker in Colorado choosing to discriminate overtly against LGBTQ people because he offers wedding cakes to straight couples but doesn't provide that service to same-sex couples, what do Republicans do? They flip it. They say, "Oh, well, this is religious bigotry if you try to, quote, force him to bake that cake," when in actuality, the real bigotry and the real harm that's being done is to the LGBTQ couple who's being denied a service that straight people otherwise receive from that same baker. So you can't just take people at their word when there are so many bad faith actors in politics. You can't do that. You've got to be objective, and you've got to be nuanced and acknowledge that, yes, anti-Semitism is not only a problem, but it's on the rise currently, as is white supremacy. But don't let people like Donald Trump and the Republican Party to exploit this issue for their own political purposes and for purposes of political expediency to attack someone who's a really powerful voice in Congress, like Ilhan Omar. Don't let them do that. And I'm glad that people are finally coming to her defense, and that the Democratic Party leadership is seeing that they need to back off here, because all they're doing is being pawns in the Republican Party's game.